Eliza loved old bookstores. She loved the smell of aged paper. She loved the way the shelves seemed to whisper forgotten stories. One rainy afternoon, she stumbled upon a small shop tucked away on a quiet street. The bell above the door chimed softly as she entered. Eliza browsed the shelves for hours. She found herself drawn to a dusty, leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed with time. Eliza felt a strange pull towards it. She purchased the journal and took it home. Eliza settled into her favorite armchair. A cup of tea steamed on the table beside her. With careful hands, she opened the journal. The pages were filled with elegant, spidery handwriting. The language was formal and archaic. Eliza was immediately captivated. The journal belonged to a man named Ethan. He wrote about his life in the early 19th century. Eliza discovered a small, folded note tucked within the journal's pages. The note was written in the same hand as the journal entries, but the ink was fresher. It was as if someone had written it recently. "Return the key," the note read. 3 days. The ancient oak. Time is of the essence. Eliza's brow furrowed. What key? What ancient oak? She felt a shiver run down her spine. Eliza examined the journal for any sign of a key. She found nothing. She was about to dismiss the note as a strange joke. Then she noticed something odd. There was a small, key-shaped indentation on the journal's cover. It was almost invisible. Eliza ran her fingers over the indentation. It felt strangely warm to the touch. As she touched it, the room around her began to spin. Eliza gasped, her breath catching in her throat. The bookstore around her dissolved into a blur of colors and shapes, as if reality itself was melting away. When the world stopped spinning, she found herself in a completely different place, one that felt both strange and familiar. Eliza stood on a cobblestone street. Horse-drawn carriages rumbled past, their wheels clattering loudly. People in old-fashioned clothing went about their day, seemingly unaware of her sudden appearance. The air smelled of wood smoke and horses, a stark contrast to the modern scents she was used to. Eliza was surrounded by buildings made of brick and stone, their architecture speaking of a bygone era. Gaslights flickered, casting an orange glow on the unfamiliar surroundings, adding to the surreal atmosphere. Eliza realized with a jolt that she was no longer in her own time, her heart pounding in her chest. She had somehow been transported back to the past, a time she had only read about in books. The year 1823, according to a nearby sign. Eliza's heart raced as she tried to comprehend. She felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was trapped in this historical moment, but she was also in the midst of history, living it firsthand. The journal's words echoed in her mind, a cryptic message she needed to decipher. Return the key. 3 days, the ancient oak. The instructions were clear, yet mysterious. Eliza opened the journal once more. She needed to understand what was happening. She began reading Ethan's entries. He wrote about his life, his loves, his dreams. He wrote about a hidden grove with an ancient oak tree. He described it as a place of peace and magic. He believed the oak possessed a unique energy. As Eliza read, she stumbled upon a chilling entry. Ethan had found a hidden portal beneath the oak's roots. It allowed him to travel through time. But something went wrong. Ethan got stuck in the past. He was desperate to return to his own time. Eliza's eyes widened. Ethan was the one who had left the note. He was reaching out to her through time. Eliza knew what she had to do. She had to find the ancient oak and return the key, but, well, she had no idea where to start. So Eliza decided to ask for directions. She approached a kind-looking woman selling flowers. Eliza tried to explain her situation as best she could. She asked if the woman knew of an ancient oak tree nearby. The woman looked at Eliza with a mixture of pity and amusement. "An ancient oak, you say?" The woman chuckled. "Why, there's one just outside of town. Been there for centuries, they say. Some say it's magical." The woman pointed Eliza in the right direction. Eliza thanked her and set off. She felt a glimmer of hope. She was getting closer to solving the mystery. Section 6. The clock ticks on. Eliza spent the next 2 days searching for the hidden grove and the ancient oak. She followed winding paths through the woods. She questioned townsfolk, but most dismissed her stories as fairy tales. Eliza was beginning to lose hope. Time was running out. The deadline mentioned in the note, 3 days, was fast approaching. Panic gnawed at the edges of her mind. As the sun began to set on the 3rd day, Eliza stumbled upon a secluded grove. It was as if the forest itself had opened up to welcome her. In the center of the grove stood a magnificent oak tree. Its branches, heavy with age, reached towards the sky like gnarled fingers. The air around the oak hummed with an unseen energy. Eliza knew she'd found the right place. Section 7. Beneath the ancient oak. Eliza approached the ancient oak. Its bark was rough and weathered. She ran her hand along its surface, feeling for any sign of the hidden portal Ethan described. As her fingers brushed against a particularly knobby protrusion, she felt a rush of cold air. Beneath her hand, an outline shimmered into existence. It was the shape of a keyhole. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest. Eliza remembered the indentation on the journal's cover. She pulled the journal from her bag and aligned it with the keyhole. As the two touched, a warm energy flowed from the journal into the tree. The air shimmered and swirled around her. Eliza held her breath, anticipation turning her stomach. Section 8. A bittersweet farewell. A figure began to materialize from the swirling energy, slowly taking shape as the mist swirled around it. It was a young man dressed in clothing that seemed to be from another time, his attire reminiscent of the Victorian era. He had kind eyes and a relieved smile on his face, as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders. "Ethan?" Eliza asked, her voice barely a whisper, filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. The man nodded. "You found me," he said, his voice filled with gratitude and emotion. "You saved me from an endless fate." Ethan explained that the journal was a time-traveling artifact, a relic from a bygone era with mystical powers. He had been trapped in the past for what felt like an eternity, watching the world change around him. He had almost given up hope, despairing that he would never return, but then Eliza arrived. She had answered his plea across time, bridging the gap between their worlds. Ethan was finally free to return to his own time, the light guiding him back to where he belonged. As he stepped back towards the oak, he took Eliza's hand, their fingers intertwining in a final farewell. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes filled with emotion and gratitude. "You are a true friend," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. And then he was gone, leaving behind only memories and a sense of peace. Section 9. Echoes of Time. The portal closed behind Ethan, leaving Eliza alone in the grove. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the distant chirping of birds, a stark contrast to the mystical energy that had just enveloped them. She stood there for a moment, the echo of Ethan's gratitude washing over her. The forest seemed to hold its breath as if acknowledging the significance of the moment. Then she felt a familiar tug. It was as if the very fabric of time was calling her back, urging her to return to her own era. The world around her began to dissolve once more. Colors blurred and shapes shifted, creating a kaleidoscope of memories and emotions. Eliza found herself back in her own time, sitting in her armchair. The transition was seamless, as if no time had passed at all. The bookstore, with its comforting scent of old books, seemed both familiar and strange. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and memories, a place where past and present intertwined. Eliza looked down at the journal in her lap. The leather cover was worn and the pages were filled with notes and sketches from her journey. It felt warm to the touch. The warmth was a reminder of the life and energy that had been poured into its pages. Eliza knew she would never forget her journey through time. Each moment was etched into her memory, a testament to the power of connection and the mysteries of the universe. She would never forget Ethan and his desperate plea for help. His voice, filled with urgency and hope, echoed in her mind. She would cherish the memory of their brief encounter beneath the ancient oak. The tree, with its gnarled branches and deep roots, had witnessed their connection and held their secret. As she closed the journal, she couldn't help but feel that a part of Ethan's spirit remained, woven into the fabric of the old book. It was as if the journal itself was a bridge between their worlds, and she knew with a certainty that defied logic that their paths would cross again, in some other time, in some other place. The future was a tapestry of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next.